Okay, guys, we're back. We're going to get into this teaching on Timothy now. You've heard it said before you can understand somebody, maybe you need to walk a mile in their shoes. And so maybe that's kind of what we've done with Paul a little bit is learned what his life was like. He's got these Gentiles that are just itching to kill him. He's got all these Orthodox Jews that are just love to pick a stone up and hit him with them. And he's he's telling Timothy, don't let any of this stuff, these messianic Jews saying that you got to be circumcised before you can come into this thing. Don't let any of this stuff enter into this church. I am leaving you in charge, and that's my charge to you. Do not let anything come in here. The exact same thing he's saying in 2 Thessalonians 2, 2 and 3, and on down, where he says, don't you remember when I was still yet with you? Don't let anybody change your mind. Don't let anybody, by word, by letter, by spirit, anyone, anyway, anyhow, do not change your mind about what I've already told you. Okay. It's kind of like that mole game, where you're trying to whack this mole that keeps popping up. That's kind of Paul's life. He's going around putting out all these fires everywhere, trying to build new churches and keep the old ones he's already got started flourishing. And so anyway, something too that I think to understand Paul, you got to know a little bit about his history. Paul came up, I've taught on it. He was taught by Gamaliel. Okay. Well, Gamaliel nominated Paul then to go back to Jerusalem to be taught by the Sanhedrin, which was a great honor. Okay. And so Paul is one of the elites that gets to go back to Jerusalem, and he's taught by the Sanhedrin, which are a group of ruling a Jewish authority, a ruling Jewish authority, with, I believe, there are 10 Pharisees and this group of people that's put together of 70 elders, and they rule on everything. Okay. And so Paul gets to come back and learn under that group of 70 elders, which is a tremendous honor. He says he was more zealous for the Talmud than all his peers. And then he gets his education from him. He goes back home. And then again, Gamaliel nominates him not to go back and be taught by this Sanhedrin, but to actually be on the Sanhedrin council. Okay. And so Paul comes back to Jerusalem. He is now on the 70-member council of the Sanhedrin. That's high as you go right there. That's like a Supreme Court justice right there. That's with the sword. Okay. And so that's Paul. He is a Sanhedrin now. And he is, that's where he crosses paths with Stephen, right? And he's involved with killing Stephen. And he is very upset with this new upstart group that's calling themselves the Way, right? And he makes it his mission as a Sanhedrin with a sword to exterminate this new upstart cult, right? And so he begins with Stephen, and then he's going to Damascus to carry out that. They send him to Damascus because he is zealous. He is on fire, and he's going to shut these guys down. And so they send him. That's why he was sent to Damascus, because he was bold in exterminating this new cult, they thought. And so that's where he has his encounter on the road to Damascus. So we have to understand where Paul's coming from here, right? He was a Sanhedrin. He was the highest you could go, and with a sword. Okay, he had the authority to use that sword as a Sanhedrin, and he wasn't afraid to use it. And so that's where we find him on the road to Damascus with an encounter with the Messiah. And so that's what he's saying. When I didn't learn this from men, I've been educated by Gamaliel. I've been educated by the Sanhedrin. I was the Sanhedrin And not only was I the Sanhedrin, I was the zealous Sanhedrin, right? I was the one that was not afraid to use my sword. Okay, so this is what we have to know about Paul coming in. We have to understand his life. We have to understand where he's coming from and where he goes. We've kind of gone through everything that Paul was facing when he left Timothy in charge, and in charge that nobody bring anything into this new church, this little fledgling church, other than what Paul had said. He left Timothy in charge saying, do not let anybody bring anything in. Okay. Same exact things he's saying in 2 Thessalonians, when he's saying, don't you remember when I was there, right? Don't let anybody say anything or anybody, anything, anyone teach you by word, by mouth, by letter, or by spirit, anything different than what I've said. He's saying the exact same thing to Timothy here. Okay. And he's doing that. He's got to guard all these churches. It's kind of like that mole game, where you're whacking over here and in the mole. He's putting fires out everywhere all the time. Okay, that's Paul's life, and he's doing it while there's all the Gentiles are just itching to kill him, and these Orthodox rabbis would just love to pick up a stone and stone Paul, but they can't because he's a Roman citizen. Okay, so before we understand anything, we've got to understand a lot of stuff before we can even understand what he's saying to Timothy. Okay, we cannot simply just gloss over what it says on the surface in Timothy and ever hope to understand it. So let's go on. Let's go back to, we're going to go back to our eSword, and we're going to go to 1 Timothy 1:4. Okay, so what's he saying here? Okay, neither give heed to fables, endless genealogies, which minister questions. We've talked about this. I've taught on the difference between the Torah and the Talmud. Okay, and so I'll read it all, and then we're going to teach on this. Rather than godly edifying, which is in faith. So now we got to go. Okay, this is just a teaching online about one of the many arguments. This is kind of a famous one, but the Talmud rabbis are constantly debating it. They're constantly, well, I believe this, no, I believe that, and these rabbis will begin to get a following. Okay, well, I'm with this rabbi, I believe this. I'm with this rabbi, I believe that. And those are the genealogies that he's talking about. Which rabbis? Okay, I follow this rabbi. No, I follow this rabbi. He's right. And taking the genealogy of these rabbis back. Okay, that's the genealogy. He's not talking about in Matthew or Luke or, Genesis or somewhere. But anyway, this is a famous story in the Talmud about two different thoughts about a question in the Talmud. There's a famous story in the Talmud that I think about sometimes when people are discussing free speech, open debate. They debated this stuff all the time. They still do. And who deserves to be considered as an authority on a particular topic? As the story goes, the rabbis are debating, they did it all the time, a very technical and specialized question about whether or not a particular oven is susceptible to ritual impurity under the laws of kashrut. And I may have said that wrong. The majority of the rabbis concluded that the oven is impure. Okay, but Rabbi Eliezer insists that it is pure, and he refuses to bend on this matter. So these rabbis are constantly debating the Talmud, and this rabbi will kind of become an authority. And this rabbi will kind of become an authority opposing that rabbi. And they will get followings of people. And some will say, no, I'm after this rabbi. Others will say, well, you're wrong. I'm after this rabbi, and he's right. These are the genealogies of the rabbis that they're talking about, who are debating questions and over and over and over that just simply lead to more questions. We saw that earlier. Paul is saying, I'm not going to get involved in in the names or what they're saying, or I have no part of the Talmud anymore. I'm going to leave that to you guys. You debate that all you want. I'm not part of that anymore. We read that just a minute ago. And so that's exactly what's going on here. Neither give heed to fables, the Talmud. All of these things that these people are coming up, these rabbis are coming up with, to endless genealogies about, well, I believe this rabbi. Nope, that rabbi's right. I follow that one. All these genealogies, all these different rabbis, which minister questions, right? Is that oven pure or impure? It's even when they finally come up with an answer, it just leaves more questions about something that's not even part of the Torah to start with, rather than godly edifying, which is in faith. Okay. Now, the end of the commandment is charity of a pure heart. What that's saying is the goal of the commandment is charity out of a pure heart and a good conscience and a faith unfeigned, faith, strong faith. Okay. From which some, having swerved, have turned aside into a vain jangling. Okay. He is talking plainly about the Talmud, that they've turned aside from this Torah and turned aside from it and turned it into a vain jangling. Let's see, let's just look at that in the King James, what that vain jangling, around 6:16, vain jangling. Let's see what they call it. Vain jangling. Random talk. They've turned it into, this Torah is just now turned into random talk. They're just talking about it. They're debating this Talmud. They've turned it into a vain jangling that is babble. It's random talk. Okay, going back to 1:7, desiring to be teachers of the law. Okay, first off, we have to understand there's two laws. They are not talking here about the Torah. They're talking about the Talmud, understanding neither what they say nor what they teach. Okay. Let's look really quick. Let's screen share. Let's go to Acts again. Go back to Acts 19:8. Okay, 19. Okay, now we're going to go back. We're going to look at Acts 19:8. And he went up to the synagogue and spoke boldly for 3 months' space. Who's he talking about? This is Paul. He's going back to Ephesus. And where's he going? He's going to the synagogue, and he's going to speak boldly in the synagogue about the Messiah, right? And he went to the synagogue and spake boldly for the space of 3 months, disputing and persuading the things concerning the kingdom of Elohim. He's talking about the Messiah. But when diverse were hardened, they didn't accept it. The majority of them did not accept it and believed not, but spake evil of that which that way before the multitude. He departed from them and separated the disciples, disputing daily in the school of Tyrannus. Okay, there's a whole ton of stuff right there. Right? Paul went to the synagogue. He pitched it to the synagogue, but almost none of them accepted. Now, a few of them did. We're going to find out some of them did. But anyway, let's look at 19. This is kind of interesting. 19:9. Let's look at this 19:9. But when the majority of the group hearts were hardened, and they believed not, but spoke evil of the way before the multitude, he departed from them. And he said, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go to the Gentiles. And separated the disciples, disputing daily. Okay, this is what they were doing. And they're disputing daily about the Talmud daily. That's all it was I believe this. No, I believe that. No, I believe this. This rabbi says this. This rabbi, they're disputing daily in this synagogue, in the school of one Tyrannus. Okay, let's see. Let's look at this guy. It's kind of interesting. Okay, that's where we get the word tyrant. Okay, Tyrannus. Maybe even Tyrannosaurus Rex. I don't know. An Ephesian, Tyrannus. Okay, this was one of those rabbis that all they were doing all day is disputing back and forth, arguing over the Talmud. And Paul's saying, look, you guys, I'm not going to get involved in your argument. You guys go and figure it out for yourself. I'm no longer part of that Talmud. And he said, I'm going to leave that to you guys. If you're not going to accept the Messiah, then I'm done. And he spent 3 months trying to convert them, and they wouldn't. Most of them didn't. Few did. We'll find out. But anyway, let's look up. I think let's look something else up. Let's go to encyclopedia. Okay, guys. So let's go and let's look at that word tyrant real quick. Okay, there's a ton of stuff here, and we got to catch it while we're here. So let's look at that word tyrant. Tyrant in modern English usage of the word is an absolute ruler who is unrestrained by law. Okay. Or one who has usurped a legitimate ruler's sovereignty. Okay. Who's the legitimate ruler? They were usurping his sovereignty by their Talmud. That's exactly what the Talmud is doing. And this guy's tyrant. That's where we get that word, right? Okay. So anyway, there's that. Okay, guys, we're going to go back now and we're going to keep going. We're in 1 Timothy 1:8. But we know that the Torah is good if a man uses it lawfully. Let's look at that word lawfully and see what we know it means. 1:8, lawfully, legitimately, right? It's G3545, legitimately. Okay, that's what that word there is saying. If a man uses it legitimately. So let's go back and read that again. We know that the Torah is good if a man uses it legitimately. Okay. Knowing this, that the Torah is not made for a righteous man. Okay, first of all, who's righteous? What does Paul say? None. No man's righteous. Not one. The Messiah says, why do you call me good? There's no good, only Elohim. There's no righteous. Our righteousness is filthy rags. Is not made for a righteous man. It's not made for the Messiah. He's the only righteous man to ever walk the earth. Paul's going to go on and say he's as bad as anybody, being unrighteous. But for the lawless, the disobedient, and for ungodly and sinners. Okay. We know that in 1 John 3:4, John describes sin as transgression of the Torah. It's made for people sinners, transgressing the Torah. Paul's going to go on to say, and let's just look at it real quick and then we'll bounce back. This is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance. That Mashiach, Yeshua, came to the world to save sinners, those people who transgress the Torah. The concordance doesn't tell us what sin is, but John does. The only definition anywhere in the Bible is John 3:4, 1 John 3:4. Sin is transgression of the Torah. That Mashiach, Yeshua, came to the world to save sinners, people transgressing the Torah, of whom I am chief. Who said that? Paul. Paul is saying that he doesn't qualify. Let's go back and read. Let's see what it said in 9. Knowing this, that the Torah is not made for a righteous man. Paul is saying plainly, I'm not that righteous man. But for lawless, disobedient, and ungodly and sinners. Paul is saying of sinners, I am the chief. I'm the greatest sinner alive. Right? So is the Torah for him. Absolutely, that Torah is for him. He goes on to say he wouldn't know what sin was if it wasn't for the Torah. Okay, and he says that several places. But now this might be a little bit I've never heard this taught, but it's true. For the ungodly and the profane, okay, that's the first 4 commandments. Okay, dealing with God and the Sabbath. These are the first 4 commandments rolled up into 2 words. For murderers of fathers and murderers of mother. Yeshua's nailing the Pharisees about, by your Talmud, your parents, they're going to starve to death because you're not taking care of them in their old age. You're giving your money to the temple, to the synagogue, and saying, these rabbis are saying, oh, you're forgiven for breaking this 5th commandment to your mother and your father. Just go ahead and give us your money. Right? We've talked about that. The fathers and the mothers. And for manslayers, what is that? A murder, right? That's the 6th commandment. Let's just go back and we'll compare them here real quick. Genesis 20. Okay, let's just go see if that's not what we just read about. 20, Exodus 20, my bad. Exodus 20 makes more sense. Okay, I'm saying that about God and the Sabbath is the unholy, ungodly, and profane. Let's see, honor thy father and thy mother, and you'll be long in the land. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. Now let's go back and read that in Timothy. Okay, Timothy 1. Murders of fathers and the mother. If you don't take care of them, you're sending them to their grave early. They're your responsibility to take care of your mother and your father. That's the 5th commandment. Manslayers, thou shalt not kill, right? Whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, thou shalt not commit adultery. Man-stealers, thou shalt not steal. Liars and perjured person, do not bear false witness. And if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine here, right? So that's kind of a very condensed version of the 10 commandments right there. We just went through, Paul's talking about it, and he calls it sound doctrine, by the way. According to the glorious gospel of the blessed Elohim, which was committed to my trust that day I was on my way to Damascus, when the Messiah came down on me that day, when it was committed to my trust. Okay, so anyway, I kind of got ahead of myself again. So again, the ungodly and profane, you're talking about the first 4 commandments, taking care of your parents. Matthew 15, 1 through 6, Yeshua is nailing them over the Talmud for breaking number 5 in the commandments. Manslayers, thou shalt not kill. Whoremongers, thou shalt not commit adultery, is the 7th commandment. Man-stealers, thou shalt not steal, is the 8th commandment. Liars and perjurers, thou shalt not bear false witness, is the 9th commandment. According to all the glorious gospel and to the Goyim, to the Gentiles, to the nation, this gospel that was accounted to Paul, committed to my trust on the road to Damascus, that he did not learn from men, that gospel. Okay. All right. So now we're going on 112. And I think Mashiach Yeshua, our master, who hath enabled me, for that he counted me faithful, putting me into the ministry. All right. On the road to Damascus again. Let's go to 113. Who was before a blasphemer, a persecutor, injurious, but I obtained mercy because I did it ignorantly out of unbelief. Is he at this point any better off than that house of Israel that is ignorant of the Torah? No, he did it ignorantly, and so is the house of Israel doing it ignorantly. He's going to tell us that. Paul did those things in unbelief. Romans, let's look real quick at Romans and see in Romans 4:4-5. Now to him that worketh is the reward not reckoned of grace, but of debt. So if you keep the Torah, you don't need grace. If you've kept it, you don't need grace. Because it's like when you do a day's wages, you're owed a salary for that day's wages. You're owed there's a debt that needs paid, and you've kept that Torah, and you don't need grace. You're going to get paid for keeping it. You're no need for grace there. But to him that worketh not, but believeth on him that justified the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. Okay, so he's talking about the house of Israel. They have not kept the Torah, but they have faith, just as Abram had faith before he was circumcised. They have faith, and they are, through grace, they're able to, it's counted for righteousness. That faith then is counted for righteousness through grace. Okay. Paul is saying back, and let's go back and look again. Paul said that he was guilty of doing these things in unbelief, right? Who was a blasphemer, a persecutor, injurious. I obtained mercy because I did it ignorantly in unbelief. He did not believe. He was ignorant and he was in unbelief. Just exactly what he's saying in Romans about the house of Israel. Exact same thing. So 14-17, we're going to start going through them faster. And the grace of our master was exceedingly abundant with faith and love, which is in Mashiach Yeshua. This is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance, that Mashiach Yeshua came to the world to save sinners, transgressors of the Torah, of whom I am the chief. And he's comparing himself to the world, right? He's saying, I'm just as guilty as everybody else. Howbeit for this cause I obtained mercy, that in me first Yeshua HaMashiach might be shown forth all long suffering for a pattern to them which should hereafter believe on him to everlasting life. This is going on into the future. Now unto the King eternal, immortal, invisible, the only wise Elohim, be honor and glory forever and ever. Amen. This charge I commit unto thee, Timothy. This one thing that I'm telling, this whole thing he said just to say the same thing he said back in 2 Thessalonians. Don't let any man deceive you by thought, by letter, by spirit. Let no man change your mind. He's telling Timothy these exact same words. Don't let anybody come in and teach anything different than what I've already told. I don't care if they're from the synagogue coming in. I don't care if they're Gentiles coming in. I don't care if they're Messianic Jews coming in, telling them they've got to be circumcised. Don't let anybody bring another doctrine in there. And that's the charge he left with Timothy. And he's a distance away writing a letter to Timothy telling him, don't let some other doctrine come in. Okay. Immortal, invisible, the only wise Elohim, be honor and glory forever and ever. Amen. This charge, this instruction, I commit to you, Timothy, according to the prophecies which were before thee. What prophecies? Paul is a genius about prophecies. Paul knows this is going to happen, right? He's saying, I don't care how bleak it looks, how bad it looks. I know how the book ends. And in that day, it was everything before Matthew, right? The Tanakh. He said, I know how that ends. I know what these prophecies say. According to the prophecies which went out before you, that thou by them mightest war a good war. You're going to fight a good fight, and you're going to win it, because I know how the book ends. That's exactly what Paul's telling him. His book was shorter than ours, didn't have the New Testament to work with. holding faith and good conscience. So don't give up. Hold on to that faith. Abram needed that faith. I needed that faith. You need that faith. Hold faith and a good conscience. Why a good conscience? Because don't let anybody tell you different. We're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing here. Don't listen to those Gentiles that are saying you're wrong. Don't listen to the Orthodox Jews that are saying we're wrong. Don't listen to the Messianic Jews that are saying I'm wrong, Paul, that I say they don't have to be circumcised. Don't listen to them. In good conscience, do everything I've instructed you. With some having put away concerning faith, having made a shipwreck. Okay. Of whom Hymenaeus and Alexander, of whom I have delivered unto Hasatan, that they may learn not to blaspheme. Who are these guys? Let's go to 2 Timothy, and we'll see if we can get a little more information. 2 Timothy 2, 16 through 18. But shun profane and vain babblings, right? He described the Talmud that way earlier. For they will increase unto more ungodliness. And their word will eat as doth a canker, of whom Hymenaeus and Felicius concerning the truth have erred. They've turned away from the truth. Right? We read about that in 2 Thessalonians, right? Isn't that this great falling away when you turn away from the truth? Well, these guys are guilty of it too. Saying the resurrection is past already and overthrow the faith of some. These guys are coming along saying this Messiah is not real, right? That his resurrection, the resurrection's already happened, and that it's over. It's done. That's exactly what he's talking about in 2 Thessalonians, right? That the day of the Messiah has come. Isn't that what? Let's just go look at that. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Think you be not shaken in mind, nor be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, as from the letter from us. Don't let anybody, anyway, anyhow, by letter, by voice, by spirit, anyone, anyway, anyhow, deceive you, as that the day of Mashiach is at hand, that he's already been resurrected and it's over. That's what, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come till it come first the great falling away, the man of sin be revealed. That's what he's talking about here. 2 Timothy 2, 16 through 18. We have to understand the things going on in Paul in his life. Okay. Who according to the truth have erred, saying that the resurrection has already passed, and they throw the faith of some. Paul is instructing Timothy, don't let this teaching get into the church. Keep it, you guard that church. Don't let this teaching come in. Okay, that was a charge that he gave to Timothy, right? Had nothing to do with the Torah being done away with. Had nothing to do with that at all. But in a great house, there are not only vessels of gold and silver. I skipped one. Nevertheless, the foundation of Elohim standeth sure, having the seal. Yahweh knoweth them that are his, and let every one that nameth the name of Yeshua depart from iniquity, Torahlessness. All right, iniquity is Torahless. So anyway, that's the end of the first chapter. So we're going to end it here. And may Yahweh bless you. May Yahweh keep you. And may Yahweh's face shine upon you. We'll see you on the next one.